a small, seemingly idyllic town nestled in the dense forests of Oregon, a young woman named Emily Collins has just moved in to take up a new job as a high school art teacher. Emily is in her late 20s, reserved but kind-hearted, and has a profound fascination for local history and hidden places. Seeking a fresh start after a painful breakup, she believes that this quiet, secluded town is the perfect escape. The locals, however, are wary of newcomers. Emily quickly notices an odd tension beneath their polite smiles and sidelong glances, as if they are concealing something. The atmosphere in the town is thick with mystery, and there is an eerie quietness after dusk. People avoid discussing certain areas, especially the old abandoned mansion that stands on the outskirts, half covered in moss and shadowed by twisted trees. Rumor has it that the mansion, known as the Blackwood Estate, has a tragic past, but details are vague, and no one seems willing to share them. One evening, after Emily receives an anonymous, cryptic note in her mailbox that simply says, "Beware the silence of the Blackwood," she finds herself unable to ignore her curiosity. The town has secrets, dark and unsettling, and she feels irresistibly drawn to uncover the truth. But as she embarks on her journey to uncover the mystery, strange things start happening. Unexplainable noises at night, glimpses of figures in the shadows, and a nagging feeling that someone or something is watching her. Now she must decide whether to pursue the truth or heed the silent warnings of those around her. Little does she know, the horrors lurking in Blackwood Estate are not the kinds that one can simply walk away from. Emily's days in the town become increasingly unsettling. Every time she tries to ask about the Blackwood Estate, the townspeople become evasive or outright hostile. Her only ally is a fellow teacher, a history enthusiast named Nate Harper, who has lived in the town his entire life. Nate shares her curiosity but warns her about the town's obsession with secrecy. According to him, the townsfolk believe that those who disturb Blackwood Estate invite a curse upon themselves. Despite the warnings, Emily's curiosity only grows stronger. With Nate's reluctant help, she digs into the town's archives and discovers old newspaper clippings about the Blackwood family, who once owned the estate. The last known residents, Margaret and William Blackwood, were wealthy but reclusive. The headlines from years ago suggest a tragedy. Margaret was found dead in the mansion, and William vanished soon after, leaving only strange symbols drawn on the walls in what looked like blood. Rumors swirled that he had lost his mind. Late one Friday night, Emily receives another anonymous note, this time left on her car windshield. It reads, "Your blood will awaken them. Leave before it's too late." Frightened but determined, Emily and Nate decide to visit the Blackwood Estate the following night to put their questions to rest once and for all. The mansion is shrouded in darkness when they arrive, its decaying walls and overgrown grounds casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. As they step inside, the air turns cold, and a faint, metallic smell fills the room. Emily feels a strange pull, almost as if something is calling to her from within the walls. They search the dusty rooms, finding old furniture covered in sheets and strange symbols drawn on the walls, matching the ones in the old news clippings. As they reach the attic, they hear a faint whispering echoing through the darkness. Emily tries to convince herself it's the wind, but Nate is visibly shaken. The whispering grows louder, more insistent, and seems to be chanting, "Let her blood flow, let her soul go." Just as they turn to leave, the door slams shut, and they are trapped. In a state of panic, they shine their flashlights around, revealing something carved into the wooden floor, a pentagram surrounded by symbols. The symbols seem to pulse, and Emily's vision blurs. She feels a hand graze her shoulder, cold and invisible. Nate tries to break down the door, but it won't budge. The whispering intensifies, voices merging into a wail that reverberates through the walls. Suddenly, they see a shadowy figure at the edge of the attic. Its form is vague, twisted, yet somehow distinctly human. Emily stumbles backward, realizing with horror that it bears a resemblance to the old portraits of William Blackwood. The figure points toward Emily, and in a hoarse, echoing voice, it says, "You have come to fulfill the pact." Emily feels a jolt of terror. It dawns on her that she might be part of something darker than she ever imagined, something that connects her fate to the long-forgotten Blackwood family curse. As the figure fades into the shadows, Emily's heart races, and she realizes that this is no ordinary haunting. There is something deeply personal about it, as if the mansion itself has chosen her for a reason. The old newspapers, the cryptic notes, and the whispers that only she can hear all seem too specific, as though her arrival in the town was no mere coincidence. Nate, visibly shaken, urges her to leave immediately, but she feels an almost trance-like pull to stay and uncover the truth. As they finally manage to break free from the attic, they stumble down to the mansion's main hall, where an unexpected discovery awaits them. A dusty journal lying open on an old table. The cover reads, "Margaret Blackwood," in faded ink. Emily feels compelled to read it, ignoring Nate's protests. The journal entries tell a chilling story. Margaret speaks of William's obsession with the occult, his endless attempts to connect with spirits, and his belief that a blood pact would grant them eternal life. According to Margaret, William grew increasingly deranged, convinced that he needed the blood of an innocent to complete the ritual. She hints at her own fear for her life, leaving cryptic notes about the next to come. As Emily reaches the last entry, her blood runs cold. It reads, "If you are reading this, you have already entered their world. The pact will take you as it took him, and as it will take the next, family blood will always find its way back." The words hit her like a punch. The Blackwoods weren't just performing any ritual. They were binding their lineage to the curse. And then, a realization sinks in, chilling her to the bone. Her maternal grandmother's maiden name was Blackwood. Her mother had once mentioned distant relatives in Oregon, but she had thought nothing of it. Nate's eyes widen as Emily confides in him. "Emily, this isn't just some ghost story. You were drawn here. They needed you." Just then, they hear footsteps echoing from the hallway, heavy and deliberate. They both freeze, listening in terror as the footsteps grow closer. A dark shape emerges from the shadows, revealing itself to be an apparition of Margaret Blackwood. Her face is twisted in a look of desperation and sorrow. "I tried to warn them," she whispers, her eyes fixed on Emily. But the blood calls to the blood. Suddenly, Margaret's apparition fades, and in her place stands the figure of William, his face a horrifying mask of anger and madness. He points at Emily and utters words that make her heart stop. "You are the final sacrifice. The bloodline will close with you." Emily and Nate bolt towards the door, but it slams shut, trapping them in. William's spirit looms closer, his form shifting and distorting as if struggling between two worlds. The symbols on the walls begin to glow, casting an eerie red light that fills the room. Emily realizes with rising horror that there is no escape. The curse demands her blood, her soul. But Nate, desperate and terrified, grabs a nearby shard of broken glass, willing to do whatever it takes to protect her. Just as William's spirit lunges at Emily, Nate steps in front, shouting for her to run while he tries to fend off the apparition. In her frantic escape attempt, Emily stumbles upon a hidden stairway that leads down to a basement. Her instincts scream for her to turn back, but the path is her only chance. As she descends, the air grows colder, thicker, and she can hear whispers all around her, voices that sound like pleading cries. The basement is filled with relics of past sacrifices, photographs, personal belongings, all of those who had come before her, their lives taken to appease the curse. At the end of the basement lies a ceremonial altar, covered in dried blood, with her name carved into it. Trembling, she realizes that she has no way out. The curse is alive, feeding off her fear and waiting to consume her. Emily is locked in the mansion's basement, surrounded by the remnants of victims who came before her. Old photographs, rusty trinkets, and personal items from various eras litter the floor around the altar. Her hands tremble as she processes the horrifying revelation. She is the last of the Blackwood bloodline, the final sacrifice needed to end the cycle of the curse that her own family's blood began. Fear pulses in her chest, but she knows that running again may be useless and deadly. She closes her eyes, gathering her strength, while the whispers around her grow louder, filling the air with voices of pain and despair. "You have to fight," she tells herself, repeating it as a mantra. Acting on impulse, she starts searching the basement, desperate to find something that could help. Finally, she discovers an old grimoire hidden on a dusty shelf, filled with handwritten rituals scrawled in faded red ink. She realizes that William Blackwood himself may have used this book in his quest for immortality. As she frantically scans the pages, one passage catches her eye. The text reveals that the trapped spirit can be freed, but only if the bloodline is renounced by choice. Emily understands what it means. She'll have to perform a ritual to sever her blood ties, but the cost might be immense. It may be her only chance for survival, and the only way to free all the souls trapped in the mansion. Resolute, she lights the ancient candles scattered around the altar and begins tracing the symbols described in the grimoire. With each word of the ritual, the air grows colder, and the shadows around her seem to come alive, watching her with unseen eyes. When she utters the final word, the floor trembles slightly, and a profound silence fills the basement. But just as she believes she's succeeded, William reappears, this time in an even more terrifying form. His figure is a twisted mix of flesh and shadow, his hollow eyes and distorted mouth forming a twisted smile. He tries to convince Emily to stop, insisting that the ritual won't save her and that she's doomed to repeat her ancestors' fate. "Blood must be spilled," he murmurs in a cold voice. "It's the only way to peace." Defiantly, Emily refuses to give in. She feels on the brink of collapse but fights against the fear, determined to break the cycle. Enraged, William lunges at her, and Emily realizes she must make a final act of courage. With a last burst of resolve, she cuts her palm and lets the blood drip onto the altar, reciting the grimoire's final words. "With this blood, I renounce all bonds that bind this spirit to the earth." William's spirit is thrown back, releasing a horrifying scream as the room seems to collapse around her. The walls shake, and an eerie light begins to emanate from the altar. The souls of the past victims materialize around her, their expressions now calm and grateful. A feeling of peace fills the space, and for a fleeting moment, Emily believes she has freed all those souls, including her own. But then, something goes terribly wrong. The light that once seemed peaceful begins to darken, transforming into a thick, sinister shadow that envelopes Emily's body. She realizes with dawning horror that by breaking the blood bond, she has become the new vessel of the curse. The souls are freed, but the ritual's weight still demands an anchor, and now that anchor is Emily. She tries to scream, but her voice is swallowed by the darkness. Her body begins to weaken, and she feels the shadows seeping into her skin, like roots searching for a connection to the earth. The mansion trembles, the floors creak, and the air grows heavy. Emily feels herself being absorbed into the house, the presence of William and the other victims fading as she's consumed by her own sacrifice. When Nate finally breaks down the basement door and finds the room empty, he sees only a space filled with darkness, the altar bare, and the grimoire lying open to its final page. Emily has vanished without a trace. All that remains is a deadly silence, as if she was never there. A chill runs down Nate's spine as he realizes that the curse wasn't destroyed, just transferred. He rushes out of the mansion, knowing that Emily's story will become another chapter in the Blackwood curse. The curse's fate now lies dormant, awaiting the next soul to step foot in Blackwood Estate, where the shadows hunger for more blood. Years later, Blackwood Estate remains abandoned, but occasionally, people report seeing a female figure in the basement window, her eyes sad and face etched with despair. Some say it's Emily's spirit, trapped forever in the cursed place. The legend of Blackwood Estate lives on, passed down from generation to generation, a dark reminder that some curses can never truly be erased.